way more than 2 people have been saved through the ministry of Grace Baptist Church. So through your ministry, no matter what you're doing in the ministry, you have a part in it, right? So that fruit goes to your account. And I don't know how many it's going to be, but it's going to be in double digits. What if we, whatever number he gives us, what if we said, let's up that by 2? Or what if we said, let's up that by 2 per 6 months, or 2 per quarter? That would be pretty realistic. That would be pretty doable. You want it to be a stretch, but you don't want it to be unattainable because you just get discouraged, right? So then you would have to ask the obligating question, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to get to that number? And again, it's not trying to trivialize it by breaking it down to numbers, and it's certainly not trying to make it into a human-inspired thing, but I think we'll see in our lesson tonight, God does expect us to do something. So we have to ask ourselves, what does our church need to do, and what do I need to do? So it might be that it's inviting somebody to church, somebody that is not saved. Now, those are harder to invite, right? Yeah. It might be that we teach a Sunday school class, or we help in a Sunday school class, and maybe we've never helped in a Sunday school class before in our life, but we decide this year I want to be a helper in a Sunday school class or in a Master Clubs class. And what if you could lead one of the children to the Lord? I'm just saying, it's a stretch goal, you know? What if we're more involved in the congregation in some way? And through our friendliness, somebody comes in and accepts the Lord. And never underestimate the power of friendliness to attract people to what you have. Used to have a colleague, he passed away several years ago, a guy named David Loden. He taught education over at the college. Some of you may know who he was or who he is. He's still alive. He's in heaven now, but he's alive. But Dr. Loden used to always say, you can't hate anybody into heaven. You have to love them into heaven. Never underestimate the power of a handshake, a good to see you. Hey, do you want to go out to lunch with me? Something like that. What if the Lord used that to bring somebody to the Lord? Would you be a soul winner? Yes, absolutely. Soul winning. Now, by the way, you know, we do the door knocking thing here, well, in non-COVID times. So door knocking and personal witnessing is certainly an important part of that. But it's not all of that. So just because you're not a door knocker or something like that, or you're not in a Sunday school class or in an Awana class, a Master Clubs class, don't think that you're not a soul winner. Don't think that you don't have the potential to be a soul winner, because you definitely do. And it might just be by saying hello to someone, genuinely being friendly, inviting them to lunch, inviting them over to your house, or doing something kind for them. Because in today's world, we talk about it all the time, and you hear it, ad nauseum online and stuff, or see it online, but there are very few people in the world that are truly kind. Now, there's a few out there that are kind when it benefits them, but there's very few that are actually really, really kind in a sacrificial way. Now, when I look at our church, I think of us that way. I think we're sacrificially kind. I think we're sacrificially giving. And I'd say I'm proud of that, but that would sort of be sinful to say you're proud of something. but I think it's one of our hallmarks, and I think we need to be careful. We need to be intentional about it, or we might lose it. Sometimes we can take things for granted just because it's so familiar. All right, well, are you at Philippians 4:8 yet? Or Philippians 4? Our text verse is going to be verse 8, but actually, verse 8 hangs on verse 1. So before we get to verse 8, how about if we go over to Philippians 4, verse 1, take a look at that, and then we'll work our way back to 4:8, all right? So Philippians 4, verse 1 reads, therefore, and we're going to have to stop there. Say, man, this is going to be a long message. Yeah, I know, one word at a time. We ought to be done by next August, but no. Therefore, that's an interesting word. When you see the word therefore, well, it's there for a reason, right? But therefore means that you're making a conclusion or you're giving some kind of prescription based on a preceding announcement, or in this case, a preceding passage. So like if you go through and explain something, or you're trying to convince someone of something, so you would take them through the whole argument, right? And then you would say, okay, therefore, this is true, therefore that is true. That's actually used in logic, isn't it? You make a case, and then you draw a conclusion, and then you can predict a future action. So this is true, therefore that must be true. All right, chapter 4, therefore. So what is Paul talking about here? Well, to get that, we have to jump back just a few verses into chapter 3, and let's look at verse 18. So Paul, actually this is a joint letter from Paul and Timothy to the church at Philippi. All right, so the church at Philippi, that was established by Paul in one of his first missionary journey, right? And he met a woman named Lydia down by the river. She was a seller of purple cloth. So he met Lydia, he led her to the Lord, he led some of her friends to the Lord. We know later the Philippian jailer and his family were added to that church there in Philippi. So Paul has a long history with this church, but he also has a deep affection for this church, and he has a love for this church. One of the things that's characteristic about Philippians is there's really no instance of overt rebuke from Paul to the church at large. Another thing that is, several things are unique about this epistle. So an epistle is just a letter, right? So Paul wrote a lot of letters to the first churches there. Philippians is unique in that it's the only letter from Paul that he addresses to not only the brethren, those that are saved, but he also addresses it to the bishops and to the deacons. So they probably need it worse. No, I'm kidding around there. So that's kind of unique. So he's addressing the whole church, so he has a great love for the whole church. Also, this is one of only two I can't remember, I think it's Colossians. No, it's 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, when he writes the letters to the church at Thessalonica. Only the letters to Thessalonica and Philippi does Paul he does not assert his apostleship. Now, all the other churches that he writes to, he asserts his apostleship. Well, evidently, he doesn't need to the church at Philippi because they know him so well. If we know one another and we see one another, I don't have to introduce myself to you every time I see you, right? So if I'm walking down the street or we're going out of the car and I run into Andrew, I don't have to introduce myself and tell him who I am. He knows who I am. We've, talked many, many times over the course of the last 2 or 3 years that he's been attending here, been a member here. So Paul knows the church. He has a deep love for the church. So he's writing not for their rebuke, but for their admonition. He's writing to be a blessing to them. Actually, he writes to be a blessing to them, but also to thank them for being a blessing to him. So it's a really unique relationship. The overall theme of Philippians is to have unity in the church, which, by the way, they have. This is a great church. No known problems. Well, we might look at one here. It's not really a problem, but he has one admonition for him. It's not really a rebuke, but so it's a really good church. It's a church that he knows well, that knows him well, and as he put it, they have communicated to him in his affliction. So they have shown material care for him in times of trouble, and, in the political climate of that day, to provide material aid to someone in that situation would be tantamount to being against the state. So you would be exposing yourself. You would be exposing your church. By helping Paul, you would be exposing your church to persecution. But they nevertheless did it, right? And, that's the kind of church that all churches, I would hope, aspire to be, right? So you have this situation. He's writing to be an encouragement to them. But he doesn't want to paint such a rosy picture that it gives the feeling that, not only is there absolutely nothing amiss in the world around them, but also that it might not come to a day where the world may creep in and the world may influence, or worldly thinking may influence the church. Or they just get complacent about where they're at. They get complacent with the blessings they have. And they get complacent about their testimony and complacent about their work. So Paul is writing it. In today's language, he would be essentially saying this: Philippi, you are a great church. But I want to remind you of a few things so that you can remain a great church, and not for yourself, but for the Lord's work. So to do that, we have to have a rallying point, right? If you're going to, like if, Justin coaches some t-ball, some baseball, softball teams. If he wants the whole team to be on the same page, so to speak, and go out and win the game, they all have to know the game plan, and they all have to play their individual position well. I mean, I know they're just little tykes, but he trains them how to do it. So he trains them how to hit, how to field, how to throw, and all of those things, right? But they have to act in unison. They have to have a unity. Now, they work on that. They have uniforms that all look alike, right? They go to practice together. After the games, if he's big spender that day, he may take them out for, a reward, a snack or a treat or something like that. And that creates bonding. Well, don't churches do that kind of thing? Absolutely. We meet together, we sing hymns. And by the way, there's a lot of power in singing hymns because it creates a sense